Ryan Leaf, former number 2 overall pick, 1998 draft, program ambassador at Transcend Recovery, transcendrecoverycommunity.com. We've talked about that and the great work that he's been doing. Also the host of the Ryan Leaf Show on SB Nation. Oh, look at you. Look at you, Mr. Media.
Following in the footsteps of the legend.
No, don't do that. Tune in for E60 Presents Leaf, which airs 9 a.m. Eastern, May 21st on ESPN. Primetime showings over the next 2 weeks on ESPN platforms as well. This time of the year, your phone usually gets pretty busy.
Right.
Now, we've talked about a variety of things. You've been very, very transparent with us about what happened in your career, what happened in your life, and how we got to this point where you have a beautiful woman in your life, you're healthy, you're sober, kid on the way, a lot of great positive things there. You recently spoke for the NFL. Was this were you talking to potential draftees? Tell us about that situation.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be asked by the NFL to be a mentor at the scouting combine this year for the current quarterbacks and wide receiver prospects that were auditioning there. And it came out of a little bit left field for me, but it was quite an honor. And I got to kind of be side by side with those guys on the field while they were working out in some of the meetings, things like that. And I pretty much told them that I was just there to support them in any way they needed, whether that was with questions or not.
What did they know about you and your past?
Probably not much, I don't think. Patrick Mahomes has signed with Lee Steinberg, so he probably knew a little bit.
Lee was your agent?
Right. When I came out, Lee was my agent. So I told the guys a little bit about my story, and they tend to listen when you say you were the second pick in the draft, because that's what they're all aspiring to be themselves, first or second pick in the draft or drafted in that first round. So,
but they don't relate, obviously, with the jail time that you served. So that's something where they go, well, that doesn't affect me. But being the number 2 overall pick and being a quarterback, okay, you got their attention.
Yeah, I think so. But the part about going to prison, I think, catches their ear for a second. I do believe they all think that can never happen to me, because I know I was in the same boat. If somebody came in and told me their story like that, I'd be like, yeah, that's not what I'm going to be at 35 years old.
But what are you trying to tell them about being the number 2 pick overall?
Well, the biggest thing I tried to tell them was that even though you're a great football player, it doesn't make you a good person. And you build that foundation first. That was the mistake I made. And so I really drove that point home. We talked about some technical things when we were on the football field. Chad Pennington was also a mentor for them, and he worked more closely with the fundamentals and technical side of things. And I was there maybe more for the support staff.
When you assess these quarterbacks, what are you looking for? And if you were working for a team and somebody said, let me ask you about this quarterback, could you give an honest answer of Mitchell Trubisky right now to a team? Like the Cleveland Browns, if they said, Ryan, what did you see there?
Right. For sure. I watched them go through the process of interacting with one another. The biggest thing I wanted to see is if they were really willing to compete, because they all worked out, which has changed quite significantly.
Yeah.
Back to when Peyton and I came out, neither one of us did. And I would have really kind of liked that. We were kind of talked out of it. So I wanted to see them compete. I wanted to see the arm strength, and I wanted to see what they look like taking a snap from center and that drop back, because so many of them playing that air raid offense or the spread offense where they're not under center, and you have to be in the NFL.
But I'm trying to figure out arm strength. Somebody's got a big arm. Patrick Mahomes got a big arm. We've had guys who have big arms who didn't translate into being successful, but then there were big arms that did. So what is the difference here if you're looking at somebody who can throw it 80 yards like Patrick Mahomes can? Well, or Trubisky's got a big arm.
Yours truly. I had a big arm. I wasn't successful in the NFL. It's really what you do from Sunday to Sunday in between games, because everybody at that level is talented. Now, there's some that it's a little bit more, but I've been using this stat all week, too, when it comes to first-round draft picks, when it comes to quarterback, right? So in the last 14 years, we've had 8 Super Bowl champions, but 4 of those have won 10 of them. Are you willing to say that the guys in this quarterback class fit in that category, and you're willing to spend a first-round draft pick? Because
would you?
I wouldn't necessarily do it.
Is there a starting quarterback in the draft?
Of course. I mean,
starting immediately.
I don't know. That's a difficult thing. I wouldn't have expected it from Dak Prescott, Though if he goes somewhere else,
Yeah, if he's with Cleveland, he's not.
Right.
It's a different story here.
like that's a huge argument for people when it comes to if Cleveland wouldn't have traded away their rights and they would have taken Carson Wentz. Well, Carson still would have been in Cleveland, and that is the problem right now.
Yeah, because I always talk about this, that you have the infrastructure in Philadelphia that was ready for Carson Wentz, whereas Jared Goff did not have that with the Rams.
Right.
And it's so hard to succeed. Just if everything goes right, it's hard to succeed at that position, as you know.
Yeah, and so I'm interested to see what happens. And the general managers are always so worried of missing out, right? They have the millennial FOMO going on, fear of missing out on the next franchise quarterback. So are they going to move up in draft picks and take a Trubisky who's only started one season at North Carolina and pick him at 5, 6, Mahomes at 12 to Arizona or so forth?
See, I think Arizona is the best spot for somebody to land right now. If I'm a quarterback, I got 1 year with Palmer in front of me, Larry Fitzgerald. Now, granted, both could retire at the same time. I got a pretty good defense. I got an offensive-minded head coach, and I get to chill for a year.
The Bruce Arians part for me is the seller, right? You get to go and sit behind a offensive and pretty much quarterback guru who's coached great ones, Ben Roethlisberger, and has done an amazing job with Carson there. So I agree with you. I think you put somebody in that position. It reminds me a lot of when Brian Griese, my year, went to Denver and got to sit behind John Elway for that year, watch the Super Bowl, and get the opportunity. And he was fairly successful while he was in Denver, and I think that was great for him.
We'll come back with Ryan Leaf, the former NFL quarterback, and did provide us with one of the more treasured items that we have in the man cave, because it's probably the one item when people see it, they do a double take. Every single time somebody sees it, they can't believe, wait, that's a Colts jersey with Ryan Leaf's name on it. And I said, everybody can tell us in the front office of the Colts that they knew exactly what they were going to do on draft day. They did not. They made up 2 jerseys, one for Peyton Manning, one for Ryan Leaf. So we'll continue with Ryan right after this on the Dan Patrick Show. Ryan Leaf back with us, former number 2 overall pick, 1998 draft, and program ambassador at Transcend Recovery. We've talked an awful lot about that, his recovery, where he was. And it's almost like if sports had a behind the music, you would have been a great behind the music for sports. You go number 2, you got money, you're in San Diego, it goes down, and it goes down for a while, down as far as you end up in prison, and then you find recovery, and all of a sudden you're involved with Transcend Recovery, where you're helping other people, not just athletes, just people, come back. And you came back nearly from the dead.
Yeah. It's a special place. It is, to see what we're able to do to help people. And I knew when I got out of prison, because of what I went through in there, that the foundation for me to change was going to be about service. It had to be about somebody else other than me. Otherwise, I was just going to repeat the same mistakes.
But you were labeled as selfish. And entitled when
self-admitted too. Yeah, I was.
And by the way, Ryan wrote this first person on the Players Tribune, and that came out today.
Yeah.
And as you said, because I saw it, you talked about how raw and emotional this was. You talk about the regrets of being, your life here. What stood out? What was the hardest thing to write with this Players Tribune?
Well, I wrote it to the younger version of myself. So I wrote it to my 21-year-old self on April 18th, 1998, the day I was standing in Radio City Music Hall for the draft, and then told him what the next, 17 years was going to be like. And when I didn't see it until I actually was riding the cab home from dinner with Andrew last night and his wife, and I looked at it, and Anna was reading over my shoulder, and it was like I was transfixed and emotional, because it's the rawest and truest form that I've been able to put out there for public consumption. I mean, I do a lot on here, but this was the whole thing. And it was the guys there helped me put it together and make it the way it needs to be, where it will be as impactful as possible.
Why was it so emotional?
I'm just so brutally honest with myself. Like, I'm telling myself, I'm looking myself in the mirror and I'm saying, this is what you're about to do. This is what you're about to do to your family. This is what you're about to do to this organization, to your life. And then at the end saying, that's the way it has to be. What I just told you is the way it had to be. Otherwise, you're not going to be the person you are now. And luckily, you're only 40 and you made it through. and you get to do this.
What would you have said to the person who was telling, if you're 21 years of age, to say, hey, dude, it's not going to go well. It could be really bad here.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was. It was like, you don't know bleep, but you're about to find out. And it came fast. It came furious. But I don't like to minimize it at all either. It was really a rough patch I had to get through. Human beings deal with struggles every single day, and they're able to get through it. Mine was a part in my life I had to get through. I got so much life left in me.
But if you go back and somebody did some real homework there, because if the Colts did their homework, I had somebody with Washington State who told me, wait till you get a load of Leaf when he gets to the pros, that you were really immature.
Yeah.
Now, you had all this talent. You were going to the Rose Bowl. I mean, you were the prototypical quarterback. You had all this talent. But he said to me, wait till you get a load of Leaf when he gets to the pros. He's really immature.
Yeah. I think I always look at back like when I first got placed on that pedestal in high school, 13, 14 years old. I feel like that maturity was arrested. There was an arrested development there. And so when I'm doing some of my speaking, especially in front of parents, I'm like, use this as an analogy. Give your 13-year-old $31 million and see how that works out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if it happened now, if you were coming out now, you would be exposed.
I think so. They did, San Diego did some research. They used a psychologist, and the psychologist came back with two different valuations profiles on Peyton's brain chemistry versus mine. And mine didn't check out, and it was still given to the Chargers.
What do you mean it didn't check out?
It pretty much said Peyton has it, Ryan doesn't. And I think that my talent made them overwhelmingly ignorant to science. So it's I've been told this. I actually haven't seen the findings or anything like that. I wonder how I would test now.
What did you make of if you had Manziel on draft night? Now I know that we've talked about this. You've even reached out to Johnny Manziel. Somebody close to Manziel reached out 3 years ago, but then Manziel never followed up there. Could you have helped Manziel? Do you think he would have listened to you?
Who knows? I think that
because you could have seen yourself in Manziel and saying, I'm not going to be listening to some dude who's 40 years of age tell me about all these things.
Because that's not going to be me.
I'm a star,
right? And I probably would have said the same thing because Lee Steinberg had given me the numbers to Drew Bledsoe, Steve Young, Warren Moon,
all of his clients,
all these guys who could mentor me in a way, and I just nah.
Oh boy,
nah. Well, I got this covered. Don't you know who I am?
Yeah. But you had to see a little bit of yourself in Manziel.
Complete. I think we used the analogy when I was here. It's like looking in a mirror some of the times. And but a lot of the people who work with me, who I go to for advice, they say, you just do your part now, Ryan. Just you do what you can control, and then you stay out of the result. Because you can't control what somebody else does with it. But me doing my part and not being silenced and trying to be of service to a guy coming into the league, a guy struggling when he's coming out of the league because the transition is so difficult, then that's my part now. I ask somebody if they feel down about themselves or things are going bad, that they go out and are of service to somebody else that day, that they don't sleep like a rock at night, that it's not bothering them, that you're actually doing something from somebody else. You don't feel that depression. You don't feel that pain anymore.
But Manziel, it almost felt like he didn't like himself. And when you get into all of the drinking he was doing, like he didn't understand what everybody else was seeing. You get in, I don't even know how you would describe it, but you get in your own little world and you don't realize that you're in this world that people are looking at saying, how did you get in there?
It's a caricature or identity crisis, right? So it was Johnny Football.
Yeah.
Right. And I was always just the football player. And then when I was done, the failed football player. So I was never Ryan for so long until I could finally put that stuff away. And until he actually is able to put that away, which all reports and conversations with some family, things have turned, which that may not mean football's in his future, but maybe the possibility of a peaceful life where he's just, he can be John.
I know it's apples to oranges, but what did you make of the Aaron Hernandez?
It's tragic.
Life and death.
It's tragic. I'm sad because there's 4 people essentially in this whole this whole thing that have lost their lives. And if there's one thing I've found through all my struggles and everything, that how precious a life is.
But to know you're going back, because
that's a different thing for me, because I was welcoming it. I really was.
You wanted to go to prison.
When I got there, I was fearful at first because the obsession of the pills and everything. But then I was like,
but you weren't getting life.
True. Completely
true.
But
you said that, look, I needed to be locked up because I couldn't take care of myself.
Right. And I was looking at 7 years, and I was more than willing to stay there. And if it weren't for my roommate, I would still be there. If he wouldn't have got me to, pull my head out of my ass and go down and actually be of service to somebody else while I was in there, helping prisoners who didn't know how to read learn how to read.
Were you a target in prison?
No, not there. I was a hero to a lot of the guys because Montana, we talked about this, is that I'm the only Montanan that's ever been drafted in the first round. I mean, there's more Mannings in their family who've been drafted in the first round than the state of Montana.
Did you play football in prison?
I did one time.
Were you the quarterback?
Yeah, all-time quarterback.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
I thought you wouldn't want to be the quarterback.
It was just natural.
Because you'd want to get away from that.
Well, it turned out that day. I mean, I went outside twice in 32 months, and that was one of the days. And because of that, the guards started gathering around the circle out there. It was just a big dirt pile, and there was razor wire and in my home state, I could see the Montana mountains that I would fish and hunt in growing up, and it just did damage to me. But when I got back to the block, one guy came up to me and said, "It was my birthday today, and I got to play catch with an NFL quarterback. That was the best birthday present I've ever had." And I still was so selfish that I was thinking it was about me. The empathetic part of that would have been like, wow, I just did something serviceable to somebody who needed it.
It's always great to be around you. Really is. Because I probably wouldn't want to have been around you when you were that 21-year-old kid.
No.
But you enlighten people. And the transparency is not lost. And I hope it's not lost on people who need any kind of help whatsoever. If you do, and, Ryan's not here to preach at all. He's just here to help. Transcend Recovery. It's transcendrecoverycommunity.com. And also the documentary did we play a role in this with the documentary with you guys?
Remember, because that first day in San Francisco, you said, Ryan, you really should do a 30 for 30 or a documentary style thing because you could really be helpful. And I told you that the biggest worry for me is my family, how I don't want it to keep getting brought up and affecting them. They understand what we're doing, and they actually were a part of this.
So ESPN has followed you around
for the last year. E60 with Tom Rinaldi.
Uh-oh.
And it's been, you're probably going to cry.
Tom Rinaldi.
Yeah.
There's going to be a piano involved here.
Yeah, and they followed me around to speaking engagements. They've talked to people in my life. It's going to be special, I think, for all of us to be of service in some way, shape, or form. It's
transcendrecoverycommunity.com for more with what Ryan Leaf is doing. And the E60, the documentary on his life, 9 a.m. Eastern, May 21st on the Mothership. Thanks for coming by. Great to see you as always.
Good seeing you.
More importantly, good luck with the baby.
Yeah.
When's D-Day?
It'll be around October 1st.
Oh, okay.
It's a boy.
Uh-oh.
And his name's MacGyver.
It isn't?
Yep.
Wow.
We can call him Mac. We can call him Guy. A lot of options there.
And you are sober, right?
I'm very, very sober.
Okay.
Actually, this was Anna's decision.
Your wife said you can go with MacGyver, or she wanted MacGyver?
She wanted MacGyver, and I said, yeah. But when I tell everybody, I told Polly, and Polly goes, really?
Yeah.
He's like, that's awesome.
He's going to make a bomb out of a pen at age 4.
Going to get out of his crib at age 2. It's transcendrecoverycommunity.com. Thank you, Ryan.
Oh, thank you.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.